all things NBA, NFL, and all the latest news around the sports world. We'll be talking about the draft lottery, latest in the NBA playoffs, Celtics going down 3-1, Giannis potentially on the move, Derek Carr's retirement, but most importantly today, we have George Pickens going to the Cowboys for a measly third round pick. He is leaving the Steelers ultimately. George Pickens gets traded to the Cowboys. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, here we go. I feel like I've been waiting to say that for the NFL and to talk about it. I feel like it's a phrase I say in my everyday life now, especially since Al Michaels said everyone was saying the hit phrase, yeah, here we go. So for the Dallas Cowboys getting George Pickens, hell yeah, here we go. And I feel like this is a move that works for both teams. And while George Pickens may be a little bit of a headache, he is now the definite number two. There is in no world where George Pickens is better than CeeDee Lamb. You may have more skills than CeeDee Lamb when it comes to being a 50-50 ball receiver, catch guy, but as far as consistently just getting out there and getting it done, CeeDee Lamb has just been one of those dogs in the NFL and is a top five receiver and just deserves his respect. So now that there's a legitimate pecking order, Cowboys went out there and got a running back. This is a nice, soft reboot. Now, I don't love their coach, and it's going to be a perfect fit for the Cowboys because he's a big personality. He's going to fit in there. It's going to be him, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, a lot of egos in there, but this is how Dallas operates. And as soon as I saw DK going to Pittsburgh, I was like, they're getting this guy out of there because the way it ended last season, like, I don't need to get into George Pickens' personal shit or the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it seemed like neither of them liked each other. And I don't know why that happened. Mike Tomlin has a history of wide receivers not liking him or receivers leaving that team. Is that the receivers, or at some point does Tomlin have to take some accountability for this consistently happening year over year? I don't know, but it seems just like the common theme in Pittsburgh where they get a generational talent and then suddenly they don't like the coaching staff and want out and throw a temper tantrum. And it seems like it happens consistently, like every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or, anytime they get a great player. Najee's gone, Antonio Brown was gone, Le'Veon Bell was gone, and now he's gone. It's just another thing that's happened with the Steelers, along with, not winning playoff games.
Yeah, this trade did not surprise me. It makes perfect sense on both sides, right? Cowboys, they get probably their best receiver since Amari Cooper left the building, and they pair somebody with CeeDee Lamb. Cowboys look like they're borderline playoff team at this point. So I like it for the Cowboys. But they are also getting a headache. I mean, he definitely had his fair share of tantrums and pouting on the sidelines with the Steelers last year. But I mean, whether it was Antonio Brown or Juju Smith Schuster or Chase Claypool or Deontay Johnson, the list goes on. I mean, the Steelers have had talented wide receivers who play very well for them. And then as soon as they're traded, they seem to disappear. Antonio Brown loses his mind. Chase Claypool gets delusional, says he's the number five receiver in the league, fizzles out of the
Three.
league. Juju Smith Schuster, I don't even know where Juju is at this point. And then Deontay Johnson is going on a world tour. He played for the Texans. He plays for the Browns. He plays for, I don't even know where he is at this point. But the Steelers wide receiver dilemma continues on. And it's a benefit for both sides. I think the Cowboys got a lot better, and I think the Steelers got a lot less dramatic. So win for both sides, but both teams are going to end up with the same result, which if they make the playoffs, they will lose in the first round or they will narrowly miss the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think, being in the NFC, the Cowboys definitely have a shot to get back to the playoffs, especially if they do end up hitting on a running back because you get some good momentum with Rico Dowdle. And say what you will about Dak Prescott being, a mediocre quarterback that gets paid top dollar. Well, he's like slightly better than mediocre, but we all understand it with Dak. I think the Cowboys still can win 10 to 11 games, especially with this duo because they did have a lot of injuries last year. CD Lamb is talented. Really, their problem has been just lacking any help. They tried to fill that void with 50-year-old Brandon Cooks last year after he's been on his sixth concussion. At this point, I mean, he's had more concussions than two at this point. I don't know how that's possible. You're like, yeah, he's going to be our number two, but you have a solid tight end in Jake Ferguson. Rico Dowdle came on, and if you hit on your draft this year, like this team should be right back in the playoffs in a wild card, and you could definitely see the Commanders, Eagles, and Cowboys, or maybe the Eagles take a step back next year. And I feel like that is feasible for Philadelphia to be the team to miss out on the playoffs next year, and then Washington and Dallas to make it.
Yeah, I just feel like the Cowboys, like they have a good defensive talent. Their offense now should be better. They picked up the Broncos running back Javonte Williams, who I'm a fan of. So I think the running game should be better ultimately because it can't get much worse than last year. And then pairing him with two great talented wide receivers, I think their passing attack should be a lot better. So I like this move a lot for the Cowboys. I think the Steelers benefit from it as well. Can the Steelers continue on their success of moving off a receiver and then them taking a step back? We shall see. And how will DK Metcalf fare as ultimately the perennial number one receiver for the Steelers? Because in Seattle wasn't always the case for him. But we'll see how he pans out in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I feel like he's more dynamic than Pickens, but they both had their issues, whether it's off the field with George Pickens or whether it's staying on the field with DK Metcalf. And I feel like with DK Metcalf, it's not only physically staying on the field, but I feel like mentally staying on the field. And maybe that's a place where maybe sometimes criticism from the NFL media is unfair. Because if you watch the in season hard knocks, you understand that everyone is dealing with the injury. So maybe when you start to see your favorite player struggle a little bit and then a couple of weeks later they're injured, like, well, maybe they were dealing with an injury that was kind of pre-existing, and then the injury that kept them out for an extended period of time is just a result of that, and that's why they're struggling the weeks previous. And I feel like that has been an issue with DK Metcalf, is just staying healthy, staying on the field.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But we'll see how this trade pans out. Another person that's been injured a lot over the last several years announces their retirement suddenly. Derek Carr. All right. Derek Carr retires after 11 years, 9 years with the Raiders. Um, Realistically, like his career is going to be really interesting to go back and look on because I feel like he's going to be a grid champion, somebody that we look back on as like a Hall of Good kind of player. Because, I mean, his early trajectory, like everyone was thinking like this is going to be David Carr's 2.0. He ends up becoming a pretty successful quarterback, was in the MVP conversation, finished third in the MVP in 2016 behind Brady and Matt Ryan. So was having a great projection. Him and John Gruden were pairing well. They had Amari Cooper. Everything was going well. And then after they already clinched the playoff spot, he injures his leg, is out. And it feels like he was never the same afterwards. I mean, he had 2022 where he made the playoffs with the Raiders, knocked the Chargers out of the playoffs, but was never really the same guy. But I feel like his career should be looked back with a bit of admiration. Four-time Pro Bowler, and walks away 240 million, 11 years, still young. So happy trails, Derek Carr. Is what I would say.
240 million to the Jeremy Lin of the NFL. Congratulations, Derek Carr. I mean, you went out there, you had your Lin sanity run, then you're kind of the grid champion. You had John Lynch, you liked him as your head coach, then he get fired, and you had your best year with Michael Crabtree. You're just hanging on, keeping Michael Crabtree afloat, keeping him alive after Richard Sherman ended his career in San Francisco in the conference championship, and then it was you. We had Latavius Murray, who's also my favorite grid running back of all time for some reason. I really liked that Raiders team, and it was always fun seeing him duel with Patrick Mahomes. I think there was one game he went for 400 yards on a Thursday night football game, and I have a lot of good memories with Derek Carr. I remember watching that Chargers game with you where he ended up knocking the Chargers out of the playoffs. I've always been more of a Derek Carr Raiders supporter than I have been of the Philip Rivers and Justin Herbert Chargers. So that was a fun moment there. And yeah, also kind of got derailed by injuries, and it's just tough with the NFL. But at the end of the day, guy went out there and made $240 million, changed his family forever. So went out there, had a better career than most players, has a lot to be thankful about, and hopefully he got out with some of his sanity.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching one of those Thursday night football games last year and seeing the best and worst of Derek Carr within the same game because Derek Carr, like I would say, pretty much after his injury, he became pretty mediocre, which is ultimately why the Raiders had moved on from him. Plus, with the changing in coaching personnel as well. But ultimately, like that Thursday night game, I remember how terrible the Saints looked. I remember there were certain points in Derek Carr's tenure where everything looked so hard for that offense. But then we would look, they would turn things on, and suddenly Derek Carr was throwing dimes down the field to MVS or Donovan Peoples Jones, whoever it might be. So great arm, great talent. It's unfortunate that his career ended the way it did, with Saints fans ultimately celebrating his retirement. But happy trails, Derek Carr. Is ultimately what I'll say with it. Happy career, and I'll look back at his career fondly. Ultimately, and we'll probably forget that he played for the Saints.
Yeah, hopefully we forget he played with the Saints because the year he did play with the Saints, we remember more of Spencer Rattler playing than we do of actual Derek Carr playing. And now the Saints are going to have a tough rebuild, but, finally the Saints are free of Derek Carr. They're free of Drew Brees. They're free of Dennis Allen. Now they're running it with Kellen Moore, and Kellen Moore is like, man, you just got to retire just to give me a chance here. Like, if I'm running it out here with Derek Carr, like, he's going to be fired before he even has a chance there. So going out there doing Kellen Moore a favor. And I remember Derek Carr saying he wanted to retire. If he ever got traded from the Raiders, and he's like, well, I guess New Orleans is cool. Still a part of the South, kind of fits my culture and identity. But I'm glad that he retired earlier rather than later and kind of just hanging around too long, because I feel like sometimes we do see players just linger and hang around way too long after,
Russ,
they're not being effective anymore. Russ, yeah, Russ is a good example. Him with the
prime
Giants. I
example.
mean, he's gonna be there, and he's gonna be like better, I guess, than their quarterback Jackson Dart that they took. But how much better is he actually gonna be for their franchise long term if he plays? Eh,
Well, at this point, I feel like, yeah, like Russell Wilson, the current state of Russell Wilson and what Derek Carr was for the Saints is you don't want him because he's going to be good enough to win games, but bad enough to not make the playoffs. Or if you make the playoffs, you're a first round exit. So I think the Saints benefit from Derek Carr retiring, both because his contract was massive, and now they have a horrible quarterback room with a horrible roster. They might not win a game next year, maybe one or two. And then for the Giants, like the Giants are going to be decently enough, like 6-11, which isn't going to be good enough for them to get an Arch Manning of the world. So they're just going to be good enough to compete temporarily and then not make the playoffs because that division has become quite good, to be honest. So, um, interesting scenario we find ourselves in with these quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting scenario, and it's an interesting scenario where suddenly everyone treats Nico Harrison like he's actually done something because the Mavericks suddenly, oh, we just magically happened to get the number one pick, and that definitely wasn't a deal sending Luca to the Lakers so we could go out there and get Cooper Flag and then also rebuild our team when we move to Vegas or build our massive casino here, and then Kyrie and Anthony Davis move on. We continue to build with Cooper Flag and then have this generational talent. And then they have Luca over there. And it all works out for both teams, but there was no negotiation or back deals or rigging at all. Even though it's less than 1% chance of getting the number one pick, I don't want to hear it. Definitely not rigged. Nothing suspicious at all. And there's no storylines that all weave together and suddenly be like, oh, that makes sense why all of this happened for the Anthony Davis trade. And simultaneously calm down an entire fan base. I mean, that would just be way too convenient, right? Right?
The NBA draft lottery is the most obvious conspiracy theory. And I feel like every single year we've been doing this show, we have this similar take because it's a fact. And this draft, it just every single time the draft lottery occurs, it just solidifies itself. This draft, right? We have the Dallas Mavericks who had a 1% chance of getting Cooper Flag and getting the number one overall pick. Cooper Flag, by the way, the consensus number one overall pick, similar to what Wemby was a couple of years ago when the Spurs got him. So now, ultimately, after they traded away their superstar, the literally Dallas was in riot mode ultimately. Their fans were on suicide hotlines at this point. It was terrible. And then ultimately, it's almost as if there was a deal done behind closed doors, like you mentioned, where you trade Luca to the Lakers, this biggest brand in all of sports, arguably, and in turn, we'll give you the first overall pick. You can have Cooper Flag. plus Kyrie, plus Anthony Davis. And suddenly, next year, the Mavericks don't look so bad. Very suspicious. But then it gets worse because then the very next pick, the second overall pick, the San Antonio Spurs, who, by the way, have Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, and a bunch of other nice players for the Spurs. Now they have the second overall pick and the 14th overall pick. So now they have the compensation to go to a team like the Bucks and say, "Hey, Giannis, how do you like having the second overall pick plus a few other draft picks plus maybe a role player?" And Giannis and Victor Wembanyama can join forces in San Antonio. And then it gets better because there's more. The 76ers, who were by far the most disappointing team, a team that was the most pathetic team in all of basketball, even worse than the Utah Jazz and the Hornets and the Wizards, the Sixers, who signed Paul George, had Joel Embiid on their team, and they were abysmal. They get the third overall pick where they can potentially draft their star of the future as Embiid's knees erode and Paul George goes into the twilight of his career. All three of those teams as the top three overall picks, very suspicious. Meanwhile, the Utah Jazz, who won what, 15 games this year, were the fifth overall pick. The Wizards, who have been the worst team in basketball the last decade, who have averaged 15 wins a season for my entire life, practically, is the sixth overall pick. This is bullshit. If I was a fan of these teams, there would be riots in the streets, and they deserve to riot after the bullshit that we saw in this draft lottery.
Yeah, I mean, are you gonna get the Mormons to riot? No. And then DC, they got their riots out in the summer of love in 2020. They're like, you know, we can't handle it anymore. We're already rioted out. We have to riot every single year in DC about something. It's like the center, like, we can't riot about basketball too. It's just too much. So they picked the two least likely franchises this year to riot because if you're the Spurs, now you go, oh, hello, Utah, we happen to get the second pick and the 14th pick. Can we have Laurie Markkinen? And we'll also throw in another role player for you. Would you like Chris Paul? Chris Paul is always available every single year. So you get the second overall pick, and then suddenly you have someone like a Laurie Markkinen and another player that you can pair with Victor Wembanyama because they have the second and the 14th, and then you pair another first round pick or two. Like the Spurs now have the assets to go out there and make a big splash. And for Philadelphia, it just seems like a waste. And that's the one that people should be the most angry about because Philadelphia has proven that unless it's Tyrese Maxey, they're gonna make the wrong decision. Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. Joel Embiid, mistake. Just a mistake. And he's like a good star, but the process with him and Ben Simmons, like it just didn't work. And then you let the entire team go. Like you take
Let's not forget about
um
Markel Fultz, too.
yeah, you take Markel Fultz over Jason Tatum, and you take who'd you take? Ben Simmons over Jalen Brown, and we saw how that turned out. Jalen Brown is the Finals MVP. So it's like with Philadelphia, it's like at some point it just feels like a waste, and that's really the team that people should be mad about. Like you don't deserve this more than Washington just because Paul George is taking a vacation mentally.
Yeah, and you know what? If you know, every time we preview the drafts, right? And this draft, we're gonna preview the 2018 one this episode. But every time we talk about the top three picks, one of them being a bust, one of them being a wild card, and the other one being a superstar. Like if I'm just looking at it right away, the most obvious one is that the Sixers are gonna whiff because they've done it with Markel Fultz, and they've done it with Ben Simmons, and they've done it with the list goes on with a bunch of players in their entire draft the past 15 years. We went over the process a few episodes ago. Check that out on Spotify, but that is the most obvious one. And then Dallas is obviously Cooper Flag looks like, based on how he played at Duke, he should be really good. So Mavericks win again. They're back on their laurels, but and Spurs are definitely the wild card. But it's just to me, it's so disgusting. The fact that they do it behind closed doors, the fact that there's been so many examples of debauchery, right? Whether it's the Patrick Ewing draft or whether it is the Zion Williamson draft, LeBron just happens to be the first overall pick going to Cleveland, Ohio, or Derrick Rose going to Chicago. Like, and then Zion Williamson owned Pelicans being owned by the NBA. get the first overall pick. Happens again back when Anthony Davis gets the first overall pick. They own the Hornets at the time, who they're actively trying to sell. It just never, it's always incredibly suspicious and it's always a load of shit. Every time. The draft lottery is fucking bullshit. On pretty much I'm so glad that the NFL doesn't do the draft lottery because every other sport that does it, there's bullshit that always goes down every single year, without a doubt. And the NBA is the most corrupt about it.
Does this like so the interesting thing with Philadelphia getting the third pick, even if it is rigged, is doesn't that set them up to be able to move off of Embiid? Because we go through a soft rebuild with Tyrese Maxey, we get some players back in a haul for Joel Embiid. We trade Paul George and then acquire a ton of assets, and then we have the third overall pick. Maybe we flip that for another star to pair with someone like Tyrese Maxey here, or maybe you trade just Joel Embiid for Giannis, and then you give them the third pick because they have to take on Joel Embiid and his useless self.
I mean, if the Sixers can get Giannis, then good for them. Because if I'm the Bucks, I would not even sniff Joel Embiid. The fact that he's played like what 4 games over the last 4 years,
Even if
but
Giannis is going to leave, though, like, would you rather take a chance on Embiid being your franchise player or Chet, who you just saw miss 2 free throws to lose a game in the playoffs?
I would probably take Chet. But Joel Embiid has a higher ceiling for sure. So I can understand that trade a little bit. But for the 76ers, like it is kind of a get out of jail free card because now you can trade Joel Embiid. Now you can trade Paul George if anybody wants Paul George at this point. Maybe the Suns and Paul George can find an alliance and they can trade Bradley Beal to the Sixers. Just get rid of 2 terrible contracts at once. Scratch each other's back. I don't know. I'm sure it'll happen someday. But I think the biggest bullshit that occurs in this draft is the fact that teams that are actually terrible, who need talent, are the ones that are going to get fucked the hardest. The Hornets, how good would the Hornets be if they could actually get a stud in Charlotte? But they won't. I mean, LaMelo Ball is good, but he's probably not going to stay in Charlotte. Utah, they need a first overall pick. They were terrible for a reason. They're not going to get their help. And the Wizards, God help the Wizards. Wizards are always screwed, no matter what. They've been screwed for 70 years at this point. So the list goes on. And the Pelicans, who gives a fuck what happens to them? But all of these teams suffer with all of these guys. You know, Dallas getting Cooper Flag ultimately.
Yeah, Dallas low key racist though, because like, all right, you have 3 stars in a row now, and they're all white. Come on now.
I mean, if we wanted to say it right, let's look back at the Dallas's history real quick. Luka Doncic, white. Luka with a C. Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash,
JJ Barea.
yes. JJ Barea. The closest thing they have, I believe, is Grant Hill, who is the whitest black person I've ever met.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, does Grant Hill count?
Yeah, he doesn't count. He
Does he
doesn't count
count?
for either one. So, I mean, there's something to be said there for the Mavericks for sure. Um,
No, Grant Hill just looks like the friend who's 210. Like, he doesn't look like, he's like, you're just the friend who's 210.
oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm not thinking of Grant Hill. I'm thinking of Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd was the guy I was thinking of. Grant Hill didn't play for the Mavericks.
Oh, same thing.
Jason
He
Kidd.
looks like Logic.
Yeah, he looks like Logic. So maybe there's something there with the Mavericks, and it makes sense. They're like the Boston of the South, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, we had Bill Russell, who was like the first good black player, though, and like we actually made a lot of waves as far as it came to like paving the way for a lot of race relations in the NBA. Like the Celtics, I feel like we're at the forefront of that. You do have like Larry Bird and stuff, but after that, it was Ray
I mean, like
Allen,
the city of
Rondo,
Boston.
Kevin Garnett. Yeah, I guess so.
More or less, I'm talking about Red Sox and Patriots fans, if we're being honest. We can blame those guys. Maybe Bruins fans. Bruins fans have had a few moments that we're not proud, well, that they're not proud of. So, yeah, it's not very good. PK Subban is who I'll say, and Boston fans will look in shame as they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Did they call him? Did they chant nerd in TD Garden or something?
Chanted a different word, but close. I remember watching them very early. This is like early Twitter days. PK Subban, back when he was on the Canadians, scores the goal that kicks the Bruins out of the playoffs. And I don't know if they were just done watching Assassin's Creed. But there was a lot of ninjas being thrown around, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, Boston. This is why people call you racist. It's moments like these that people call you racist. Now, maybe that's just Bruins fans. Maybe it's not the rest of the Boston. I don't think Boston, the city, is racist, but Boston sports fans, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I feel like it's definitely the Bruins fans, if anyone's a culprit.
Yeah. And Boston, like Red Sox fans were historically racist, but I think they're good now. But they were the last team in any pro sports to have a black person. So maybe they're not like that anymore, but they were at one point. But Celtics, they're free of that, I would say.
Yeah, Celtics fans hopefully should be free of that. You never know, because I feel like they might be throwing a lot of them around on Wednesday night because Jason Tatum went down with the ankle injury. He was 16 for 28, had 42 points, and Celtics were battling with the Knicks. Knicks kind of started to take control of the second half, but we'll never know because Jason Tatum injures his ankle in a game that really the Celtics were starting to shift momentum, but just a lot of mental errors from Boston in this series and kind of, you know, got NBA champion syndrome where it just feels like everyone's banged up. Porzingis had the flu. He hasn't been the same since March. Jason Tatum had a wrist injury. Now he's injured. Drew Holiday had a hamstring injury. Al Horford is old. And then Jalen Brown, his brain is also injured at some points throughout the game.
Yeah, and it felt like the nail in the coffin. First two games, they blow a 20-point lead, mental errors constantly, can't make a shot from three, which is what they live and die by. And then they get the good win in game three. It seems like the momentum is shifting in Boston's direction, still favored in the series. But this game is the nail in the coffin. They were up, I believe, 15 points at halftime, or at least at one point they had a 15-point lead. Tatum gets banged up, and the Celtics just lose all momentum, have a terrible third quarter, and then fourth quarter, he gets injured. And now ultimately, the Celtics are probably dead at this point. I don't see how they come back from here, unless if we see Jalen Brown step up, we see Derek White step up. It's not impossible, but I feel like losing Tatum is going to suck the life out of Boston, a team that's already been kind of shaky this series, anyways.
Yeah, they've kind of been shaky, and it kind of hasn't felt like their year. At least this series, they had a really good regular season, and then this series, there are times where it's just watching them just take three after three when they're only down by like one possession. It's like just go to the rim or get a layup every once in a while. Not everything has to be either a turnaround jump shot with three people on you or a three. And then there are just moments in this game where Jalen Brown has four fouls, and then there's a loose ball, and then he just pushes over OG Ananobi. He's like, bro, your entire team is dealing with the injury right now. You're in a battle down 2-1, going back home with a chance to go up 3-2 if you even the series 2-2, and then you just push him out of the way, and now you're on the bench, and you end up sitting until like 4 minutes are left in the fourth quarter, and then you're completely out of a rhythm. Your team's down 7 points, and then Jason Tatum gets an injury, and this team was kind of just out of sync and out of a rhythm. The only way they really could come back is kind of if Tatum isn't there, you have so many other good players on your team like Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jalen Brown. It's not necessarily a bad thing. If they're eating up those shots, the problem is Jason Tatum is the one who runs the offense, and he's also one of the best defenders on your team, where he can defend 1 through 5, whether it's Brunson, Carl Anthony Towns. He can match up on Mitchell Robinson or OG Anunoby. It's like losing him, it's like you're not just losing his offense, like you're losing one of the best defenders in the NBA as well, and you're also losing one of your playmakers on your team. Now you still have Derek White, still have Drew Holiday, so I'm not going to say you're dead yet, but it's not looking good. Do I think they can win on Wednesday in Boston? Yes, because you still have a lot of really good players on this team, and you still have the capability to get hot. And then the Knicks also, if you see Tatum go down and he isn't playing, there is mentally, opportunity for the Knicks to maybe relax, or Boston can come out and get hot in this game, where I don't necessarily know if New York's going to be coming out gangbusters, where the biggest lead in the series that they had was in this game, and it was 7 points through the first 4 games, the biggest lead that they had was 7 points. They end up winning by a lot more than that, but that was the first time they led by more than 2 possessions after 4 games. Like, I still think the Celtics aren't dead. I think the Knicks will probably win the series, but I still think it's going to be a tough one. They're not just going to roll over, even if Tatum is out. Feel like it's an opportunity for players like Drew Holiday, Derek White, Pritchard to step up, get yourself a little extra money in the offseason.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, let's be clear. The first two games, they blew a 20-point lead. If those 20-point leads are salvaged, like they normally are in most NBA games, then we're talking about a series where the Celtics are ultimately up 3-1. And we're talking about a gentleman's sweep later on. But the Celtics have shot them. The Celtics are the team that's losing right now, obviously. But I feel like they're the team that are beating themselves. It's not the Knicks that are beating them. I'll give my credits where the credit is due for Jalen Brunson. He's been absolutely amazing in this series. He's going to have a statue outside of New York in no time. He's been excellent for him. So I give credit to him there. But, like, I'm not scared about Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges has done nothing this series. OG Ananobi's played well. He had a good game one. But ultimately, for the Knicks, like I feel like it's been the Celtics beating themselves rather than the Knicks beating the Celtics. This game was maybe the closest part of the Knicks beating them, but ultimately it came down to a buzzer beater by Jalen Brunson, which beat them in game two. Came back from a choke job in game one. And then, other than that, like game three, they blew them out. And then in this game, the Celtics had possession and they were looking good. They had a lead, and then they withered it away because of poor shot making and just mental errors. So I do think the Celtics can do it. They just have to lock in, and we need Jalen Brown, a guy who has won Finals MVP, who has been a top 15, 20 player in the NBA at any certain point. We need him to step up. He needs to be the superstar right now, especially if Tatum is out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I do think the Knicks have played well in this series, and they played like as good as they can play. And I feel like they've been playing the best basketball I've ever seen the Knicks play. Because, well, like maybe Mikal Bridges isn't a superstar, but I disagree, and I think he has made an impact. I mean, in this game, he was plus 14, had 23 points, and then he's just hitting. Maybe he's not going off from three. He was 1 for 6, but he's still 11 for 21. He's hitting a nice little jumper each time, and just defensively he's been causing a lot of problems for Boston, whether it's on Tatum, on Drew Holiday, or Pritchard, making them turn the ball over. So he's definitely been active. He's been leading them in minutes. I mean, anytime you play 48 minutes, and then this game he played 44, all but 4 minutes in a game, he's been a complete Iron Man. And now he has the second longest active streak in NBA history as far as games played in a row. So, well, he's not a superstar. I do think the Knicks you have Brunson, who is a star. Carl Anthony Towns should be a star, but you have a lot of really good glue guys with Bridges, Ananobi, and Josh Hart. You just need a better second star than Carl Anthony Towns because, again, in this game, he was trying to help the Celtics. Like, just dumb fouls, in foul trouble on the bench, and then he's just not as dominant as he should be for a big man.
Yeah, I think Mikal Bridges has been a little inconsistent for my taste, but I understand what you're saying here. Carl Anthony Towns, I feel like this has kind of been his kryptonite over the last several years. It's been a guy that has the size and has the ability to be a top center in this league, but maybe it's because he's too soft, or maybe it's because I don't know what it is exactly. I think he's a nice player overall, but it just feels like he doesn't have that same dog mentality that you would see with like a vintage Shaq, or what you see with Jokic, or what you see with Giannis. Like, I just don't think he has that same grit that a lot of these other big men have. But hopefully he turns it around. I mean, he played pretty well in game four for the most part, 23 points. Um, got had a shit ton of rebounds, but ultimately he needs to step it up if the Knicks are going to beat the Celtics these next three games, which I think he will.
Yeah, and for him, it's not necessarily like being like the 30-point scorer. Like, he's not expected to be a star. He's just expected to be a 3 and D guy and play all out on defense, which he has done.
Yeah, but we'll see what the Knicks do. I mean, ultimately they play Wednesday at this point, so could be the end of the Celtics season. Could also be interesting because tomorrow we might see the Cavaliers pack their bags up after a historic regular season for the Cavs, a team that we both didn't really believe in.
Yeah.
Pacers have absolutely dominated the Cavaliers so far. when we followed up, I believe this was right after game one when Halliburton hit that game winner
Game
where we
two.
were following up on. Yeah, game two. And now we're talking about them ultimately putting the dagger in and ultimately beating the Cavaliers in five potentially, which we will see tomorrow potentially.
Yeah, and then Donovan Mitchell ended up getting injured in this game. He ended up not coming back when the Pacers were absolutely destroying them. And then, the Cavaliers come back, end up winning the game. And then the very next game at halftime, it's 80 to 39. You're up 41 points on the Cavaliers. I mean, 39 points is a quarter for some teams. And then that's your first half. And then, speaking of it being a quarter for some team, oh, yeah, the Pacers had two 40-point quarters in the first half. And then they go out there and now they're on pace for 160 on you. And this is a team that you guys are built really similarly with Halliburton, Darius Garland. And then for the Cavaliers this year, it's unfortunate because Evan Mobley has been injured. Darius Garland has been in and out of the lineup, and now it's Donovan Mitchell. But that's kind of why I've had a problem with this team at points. It's like I can't really trust Donovan Mitchell because I saw him get hurt last year. Darius Garland had his issues, and then just overall with this team being prepared and showing up when you have Kenny Atkinson versus Rick Carlisle, like clearly it's overall just been an experience matchup where Indiana was there in the conference championship last year versus Boston until Halliburton got hurt in game two, and then Rick Carlisle just completely outclassing Kenny Atkinson at this point. And like with Halliburton, like what else can you say about the guy? He doesn't put up the most gaudy numbers in the world, but now you want to talk about him and Tatum, just two of the most disrespected stars in the league at this point, and then him proving everyone wrong in this series and looking like this is going to be a team that might make the finals this year and probably will because they are not really having a tough time with Cleveland, where it seems like the Knicks are giving everything they have versus Boston. Boston's kind of just like, well, Tatum got injured at this point and they're dealing with a lot of issues right now, but Boston's not giving them their full attention. They just seem like a team that's distracted right now for whatever reason because it's the NBA playoffs. I don't know, but what Indiana's doing right now, I feel like is a lot more impressive. Just an
Oh,
absolute demolition.
yeah, I mean, last game, like you mentioned, they were up by 40 at one point, and even when it felt like the Cavs were taking control, you would get a big shot from whether it be Halliburton, whether it would be someone like Ninhard or Pascal Siakam making some big shots. But overall, like watching this game, it felt like even when the Cavs were up by at one point, say 10 points, it didn't feel like the lead was safe. And it reminds me, I know I compare a lot of these teams to these Warriors teams, but I just feel like it's a good indicator of a team that is never really down. Where the Pacers, like at one point, the Cavs in the early parts of this series were up by, say, 10, 15 points, and they would come back with a couple of threes. They'd steal the ball. And the way their fast paced offense operates, it does remind me of a young Warriors team. And I'm sure there's other examples we can use, but I just love their pacing. I feel like it exhausts teams, and I feel like when it comes time to face the Knicks eventually in this upcoming round, a team that's had Jalen Brunson banged up, people playing 40 plus minutes, Mikal Bridges, for example, playing 48 minutes. For a team as fast as the Pacers, I just feel like they're going to ultimately, I would take them to beat the Knicks in six ultimately. So I do think we're going to see a Pacers NBA Finals ultimately. And whether they're paired up against the Timberwolves or the Warriors, Nuggets, Thunder, doesn't matter. I feel like whoever they face, they're going to ultimately give a lot of hell to them.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be a tough matchup because I feel like in every series that the Pacers have, they're going to be the underdog. I feel like Knicks fans are going to be blinded because you want to talk about like a team that's winning in Indiana versus a team that's just not losing. Like Boston is beating themselves in this series. It does not feel like the New York Knicks is winning. It's like, is this more about what the Knicks are doing or more about what the Celtics aren't doing? Like it just feels like it's what the Celtics aren't doing because you blew three 20-point leads and then you absolutely blow them out in game three and then Tatum gets hurt in game four. Like it feels like the Celtics are just losing to the Knicks, where it feels like the Pacers would beat this team. They already beat them last year. And I know the Knicks had some injuries, but the Pacers are a better team this year. And I feel like they would go out there and probably beat them in five or four at this point.
Yeah, I'll give respect to the Knicks. I think they can win at least a game, but I feel like, especially with the rivalry, historically Knicks and Pacers are a heated rivalry, so I feel like there would be some animosity there. And which team is going to be the least tired? I feel like the Pacers, the way their conditioning is, the Pacers should be able to win that series. Now, looking at the West, we have an amazing series with Nuggets and Thunder. We've been spoiled. Both series that the Nuggets have been involved in have been incredible. With the Nuggets and Thunder both just exchanging blows, right? Last game, Thunder got the best of them, and they're basically just exchanging blows, right? Nuggets got blown out in game two. They come back in game three, get the win. And it's been neck and neck for the most part. But Nuggets and Thunder, what have we learned about these teams so far? Through 4 games. And do you think this? I think this is going to go 7 personally. Do you think this game goes 7?
I do. Yeah, I think they're just kind of trading blows at every point this time. It's going to be a war of attrition. It's going to be, can Denver outlast Oklahoma City? And is the rest going to help Oklahoma City? Or is Oklahoma City going to continue to shrink a little bit more? Because notice with OKC, when they were on the road versus Denver, they weren't as high flying on offense as they were at home. And that's something that scares me with OKC is it seems like this team on the road is a little bit worse, where they're not able to really just go out there, dog a team, where Denver was in it in every single game and they were down big in the first half and able to come back. Aaron Gordon, they went out there and they only got 87 points. And when you lose to a team who only drops 92, feel pretty good after that if you're Denver. So I do think that this is going to be a neck and neck series, and it's going to come down to, is Jalen Williams and Czech gonna be enough? And is Jokic gonna be able to really mentally keep it going? Because it seems like his shot has gotten a little bit worse each game. As far as when it comes to his three ball, it's starting to fade as the series goes on.
Yeah, and I feel for Jokic because he's been playing pretty much the entire game. He's basically been the player coach for them. And honestly, like I think game four, the fact that they were shooting 30% from the field, um, and they were shooting 25% from three, the fact that it was a 5 point game, and really the Nuggets had control up until the fourth quarter. The fact that it ultimately just became a 5 point loss, like I feel like that's a win, and I would agree with your take there. But I think in game five, right, getting a little bit of rest, this will be going back to OKC, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I do think we might see a Thunder winning game five, but then the Nuggets coming back in game six and ultimately securing a game seven. And then at that point, I feel like that's when we're going to see the lights be too bright for the Thunder potentially. That's when we could see a potential disastrous performance. I don't want to bank on that for them because I think they're a talented team and they can overcome that. SGA is a great player. But if I had my money on it now, I think Thunder are going to win in game five, Nuggets winning game six. And when game seven comes, that's where we're going to see a Jokic performance that's legendary, a 45, 25, and 15 type of game. And then that's when we see Jamal Murray step up, Aaron Gordon rise to the occasion, Russell Westbrook rise to the occasion, and maybe even Michael Porter potentially. Um, if I had my crystal ball, that's what I would predict right now for the series to go.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. It'll be how's Oklahoma City's shooting going to be, because now we're in a best of three matchup, and typically that's what is going to affect the role players. We all know Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, and Jamal Murray, and Jokic kind of are what they are in these big moments, and then Russell Westbrook is added to that, and then we know Christian Braun will step up in big moments. We saw him do that in the first round in Game 7 versus the Clippers, where he really stepped up and started hitting big threes. So are we going to see Caruso, Lou Dort? How's the starting second star in your team, Jalen Williams, going to operate in these last two games? How is Chet going to operate? And is SGA going to be able to be himself? Is he going to get the whistle in the last 3 games, or is he going to keep getting frustrated? Like, it felt like he was very upset and just kind of over it by the end of game 3, just not getting to the line. And he only had 18 points.
Yeah. And then game four, he ended up having 12 free throws, which is, I feel like, way less than what we're used to with him. Um, I think frustration is going to continue to mount for the Thunder. I like the Thunder, but I do think that the Nuggets are overall a better team who have experience. There's more veterans on that team. So that's why I would take the Nuggets to ultimately squeak it out. But Thunder, we got to see more from Chet Holmgren. We got to see more from the role players. We need to see them stand up, or else they're going to be out of the. They're not even going to make it to the conference finals, which I feel like for a team that won 68 games, that's a massive disappointment for them. And maybe changes are made. Maybe there's a big trade that comes from that. Um, but if they don't win this series, there's got to be changes. They have to make a move otherwise.
Yeah, we know the finals isn't going to be OKC and Cleveland, and it never seemed right. But the fact that people were actually buying into it, I'm like, you really think that the NBA is going to allow Cleveland and Oklahoma City? Like, first of all, I don't even think either of these teams are good enough to get to the finals. But you think the NBA would let that happen? I don't know.
No.
They saw what happened with Phoenix and Milwaukee, and they're like, that doesn't need to happen again.
Well, plus, like, we're set up for a series potentially with the Knicks and Pacers, the 3 and 4 seed. We have a 6 and 7 matchup with the Timberwolves and Warriors going on right now as we're speaking. Timberwolves up by 5, but we have a chance to have the 4 seed and potentially the 6 or 7 seed make the finals against a 3 or 4 seed, which I feel like shows what era we are in the NBA again. Parity's back. Each series, like whether it be the first round, second round, conference finals, or NBA, like we're finally back to competitive playoff basketball in each round of the playoffs. Eastern Conference has been somewhat disappointing in the semifinals, just based on the fact that the two teams that we were expecting to be the juggernauts that were going to just walk themselves to the finals have been disappointing in the second round. But it's set up for the Pacers ascending, the Knicks ascending, Nuggets have played great, Timberwolves could be ascending, Warriors, what will they be potentially? So it's set up, honestly, semifinals have been set up for an iconic NBA finals, I feel.
Yeah, and we'll see. And it really does all depend on the health of Steph Curry if it is going to be an iconic NBA Finals because I feel like no one else in the West is deserving after watching this Timberwolves series. Like, my God, Steph Curry is not playing right now, and the Timberwolves are struggling with the Warriors right now. Like, this is not good. Like, this team cannot make the conference championship. It's a travesty. Like, I'm seeing them now with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, and this wasn't like the Timberwolves being amazing versus the Lakers. Like, I'm honestly convinced, like, when I looked at the Lakers roster, like, this doesn't make sense that they'll be really good in the playoffs or make the finals. Then the Timberwolves kind of go out there and destroy them. And now you're struggling with the Warriors without Steph Curry. The series would be over tonight if he didn't get hurt. I mean, he pulled his hamstring, and at best now, he's going to be coming back in game 6. Like, this is absolutely tragic. Like, first of all, we could have the opportunity to see the Celtics come back from 3-1 or down 0-2 with Jason Tatum. And now, without Steph Curry, the Warriors are actually competing with the Timberwolves, and Jimmy Butler almost got them the win the other night. Like, this is laughable for the NBA. And if the Timberwolves are in the conference championship, it's going to be an absolute travesty because this looks like this series is kind of a joke compared to the rest because it's close and competitive, but just the level of play with the Timberwolves when you're going up against a team missing an MVP, it's just disappointing to see them struggle. Like, you should be blowing them out at this point.
Yeah, I can say, I mean, I do think the Timberwolves are a good team. They've been constructed well. Um, I am obviously historically not a big fan of Rudy Gobert or Julius Randle. So those are my qualms there. But everybody else, like, I do like Mike Conley. I think Anthony Edwards had a great game 3. Dante DiVincenzo. We love Dante DiVincenzo and Nas Reed on the show. Um, but it is unfortunate because I think these teams, we saw what the Warriors did in game 1, and it felt like game 1, all right, they're the better defensive team. They have the two best superstars paired together. This team should be the one that ultimately moves on. If the Warriors can win tonight, then I think they win the series because Steph will come back eventually. Even if they're down potentially 3-2 by the time he comes back, I do think that Steph Curry and the powers of Steph Curry, greatest player of our generation, potentially, I think that they can come back and win the next 2 games if that's the case. But if they lose this game and they're down 3-1, I think that looks a lot worse for them. If the Timberwolves make it, I think the Nuggets will ultimately beat them, probably in 6, I would say. But um, I just feel like we're missing out. Steph Curry winning a 5th ring, of all the narratives that could possibly exist moving forward, this is the best narrative, I think, for the NBA. Of all the potential champions, this is the one that would ultimately solidify a GOAT debate. This would solidify a number of other things. We've talked about it before. The fact that we might miss out on that and it might be the last time we see the Warriors potentially be super competitive, is a tragedy to the NBA, I think.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely laughable too that this series is playing out the way it is, and then people are like, Anthony Edwards is paving his way as the next face of the NBA. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's struggling with a team without Steph Curry. Steph Curry is still the face of the NBA. At this point, Jokic is currently the face of the NBA. What are we talking about the next face of the NBA? Can we talk about how great what Jokic is doing right now instead of talking about a guy who's struggling with a unit that doesn't have scoring, and what Jimmy Butler did in the last game was more impressive than what Anthony Edwards did, and Jimmy Butler did it on one hip, by the way.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler has been banged up. I agree with the Jokic stage because honestly, we're seeing the greatest peak of any center in NBA history. The only other person you could argue that you could put in that conversation with Jokic would be like vintage Shaq, but I feel like modern NBA, what we're seeing, we've never seen a center do what Jokic has done to this point. Where Shaq, we've seen the Wilt Chamberlains of the world, we've seen the Hakeem Olajuwons, we've seen Moses Malones. But in this scenario, when have we seen basically a point center who's going to average a triple double, get 15 assists, get 20 rebounds, and score 50 points? It's unreal what we're seeing from Jokic, who's going to potentially win his fourth MVP, has the chance to potentially win his second ring, and ultimately enter that conversation, I would say. But it's a shame that it's not giving him the light. But I would say Anthony Edwards, if we're looking at his performance through 4 games so far, right now he's shooting 3 of 9 of 8 points, not stepping up offensively like he should, relying on Julius Randle. He's really only had one great game in this series so far, which was, I would say, game three, 36 points. But otherwise, he hasn't really been the focal point of the Timberwolves team and the reason why they've been successful. It's been the two guys that have notoriously been horrible playoff performers and Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I don't know how someone looks at what Anthony Edwards is doing. Is like, yeah, more impressive than Halliburton running that Pacers team and absolutely dismantling a juggernaut, or looking at what Jalen Brunson is doing, dismantling a Celtics team where the dude is going after. I mean, he's going after Derek White, all defense, Drew Holiday, all defense, Al Horford, one of the best. Al Horford is good, you know. He's going after Peyton Pritchard, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. I mean, I get exhausted just listing off these names, and then he has all of these players guarding him, trying to trap him, get pressure on him, and get the ball out of his hands. And you're telling me Anthony Edwards kind of chuckling at Brandon Podjemski is tougher than that? Like, that's more impressive than him hitting that three versus the next. Like, you beat a bad Lakers team, and Luca got hurt at the end of the game. LeBron had a sprained knee in that game, and he's 40 years old at this point, and they don't have a center. Like, that's what you should do against that team. Like, I still don't understand. Like, the hype to me is still a little bit weird when suddenly, when Jason Tatum has two bad games with a wrist injury after getting hurt versus Orlando, suddenly he needs to be traded for Giannis. Like,
Yeah.
he hasn't beat Giannis in the playoffs every single time except for the Kyrie year.
Yeah, I agree. I think, do you ever feel like sometimes the NBA has artificial narratives that they create? I think it's especially common on First Take, where, I mean, they're putting Anthony Edwards in the face of the league conversation. I feel like, in my mind, Anthony Edwards is a contender for face of the league. It's just he hasn't won anything yet. He's made one conference championship. He hasn't won a title, and I feel like in order to be the face of the league, you need to win a title. Personally, um, and he hasn't. I mean, if we're comparing him to Jokic, if we're comparing him to Tatum, if we're comparing him to Giannis, Luca, whoever it might be, he hasn't had those playoff performances like these other guys have had. Luka carrying the Mavericks last year, Jokic carrying the Nuggets a few years past, and what he's doing this playoff series so far. I just feel like they're artificially cementing him as that top player when he hasn't earned it yet. It's just like what they did with LeBron with the GOAT debate. The list goes on. I feel like they're artificially planting Anthony Edwards as the face of the league. And I can use a number of other examples. Josh Allen with the NFL. There's a number of other examples, but I just feel like they're artificially putting him as face of the league. Could be face of the league someday, but I just don't think it's now.
Yeah, and the Timberwolves, as constructed, good playoff team, can win a round or two, if they're lucky. But getting to the finals or winning a finals, I feel like they're really far away from that after watching this series.
Yeah, I don't know how far away they are. I don't know if it's going to be like trading Rudy Gobert. I just don't see them as a championship team. I think that the Nuggets are going to beat them or the Thunder. Um, but I do think they could potentially beat the Warriors this series, especially if Steph is going to continue to be banged up ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, if Steph is banged up in this series, you should win this series. Even if he does come back, he's still coming off a hamstring injury, and he Steph isn't able to practice right now. He's on treatment only. So like game
Yeah.
6 is the best case scenario, so it's probably over at this point, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, right now the Warriors have the lead going into halftime. If they can win game 4, the Warriors that is, I do think that the pendulum swings in the Warriors direction. Right now I feel like the Timberwolves have so far the momentum, especially after Steph being down. But we're seeing Buddy Hield step up. We're seeing Jimmy Butler step up. Jonathan Kaminga in replacement of Steph Curry, he's been playing well for the most part. So Warriors, they're not dead yet, but I think that this is the most important game that they can possibly have. If they win this game, I think they can still very much win the series.
Yeah, because if you win this game, you can relax a little bit. And I feel like if you're the Warriors, you have to think about if you're the Timberwolves, like, can Steph Curry practice right now? Is he treatment only, or are they messing with us to get us to relax in a game like this? Because if you can kind of play with the Timberwolves where they're under the pressure, like it's very likely that Steph Curry won't play in this series, and they're actually kind of baiting them into maybe relaxing and dropping a game or two where they don't play with as much of a sense of urgency. I feel like that's a real strategy, and you have to play some real mind games with some of these teams. So I feel like if you're the Warriors, that's the best case scenario where you have an opportunity for Jimmy Butler to really step up. Maybe Kaminga get some valuable minutes, and then Buddy Hield continue to just grow into a position that you'll need him to be in to win a finals. And if Steph comes back fully healthy, this team's going to win the finals, and he's going to get
Yeah,
his fifth ring.
yeah, and I hope that's the narrative that happens ultimately. But Timberwolves, if they lose this series, they might need to make a big move. We just heard earlier today by Shams Giannis potentially on the move, open to exploring a life without the Milwaukee Bucks. That immediately opens trade conversations. Where will Giannis go potentially? So far, early reports are showing potentially the Spurs, Rockets, and Thunder because they have the most assets outside of the conference could make that big move. Hearing about Giannis potentially leaving the Bucks, what are your early thoughts? Where does Giannis fit in your mind?
Yeah, for me, he fits with a bad team that's going to give up too much for him because personally, as someone who likes watching basketball, I think watching Giannis is painful at times as someone who likes the fundamentals of the game. Like for me, I just look at him in the playoffs this year. And I'm like, this is a player that's going to age terribly. We kind of saw it in the playoffs this year. He's had issues with injuries, and then he's a monster on defense. He's an all world player, but he just has the issue where it just doesn't seem like he's added enough skills to his game where he still doesn't have a post move. His signature move is a charge and he can't hit a jump shot. I don't think this guy is going to age gracefully. I think you're getting someone with about 2 to 3 years left with your prime. So you have to also think of that as your window here. So for me, he fits best with Dallas with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. If you trade that first overall pick, maybe you package Clay Thompson, someone else for him, but like for me, that's where he fits best because it's on the same timeline, at least with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, where they're all older stars who are kind of injured, who are going to fade away over the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe Kyrie Irving having the next best career, but like for me, like Anthony Davis is more skilled than Giannis, but Giannis is just physically more dominant. But like I just watched him in the playoffs last year. He's just painful to watch.
Yeah. Well, I can say that what's left of his contract, 3 years, 175 million. I do really like that Dallas comparison. I didn't really think of them before. When I think about where he should go, I think about where he could go that also, though I feel like they have enough assets to ultimately acquire him. I wouldn't want to see him in a team like Houston. I feel like I'd like to see him on the Spurs if they can make the contracts work. I just don't know who they're going to trade ultimately for him because they got to make the contracts work. Maybe that's where Chris Paul goes. I don't know. They have the second overall pick, um, and they have the draft capital. If they want to contend immediately next year, you put Giannis with Wemby and De'Aaron Fox with the role players that they currently have, a team that's currently in transition after Popovich retires. Then I feel like that's going to be a really exciting team. And I hope to see that happen because I'd love to see him. If Giannis can win another ring, where does he rank all time? This could be an exciting story. I think the Spurs would be really fun to watch. So I feel like I'm rooting for the Spurs. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Knicks go and make a trade. They package Carl Anthony Towns. I just question whether they have the draft picks to do so because they traded a lot just to get Mikal Bridges, and I just don't know if they'll have the assets for it. My early prediction, I would say the Spurs currently.
Yeah, I feel like outside of picks, though, if we're looking at players, the Knicks have a better package to offer because some people said they signed Carl Anthony Towns and traded for him as a bigger piece where if Giannis or someone else was to become available. So I do think the Knicks would make sense. For me, the Spurs, like, it just doesn't make sense because Wemby's so young and Giannis is going to be out, like, he's just going to be out of his prime in the next couple of years. So for me, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to pair them together at this stage of their career.
Now, when we think about the philosophy of the Bucks, right? Giannis potentially leaves. You still have Dame Lillard there. Is their goal like blow up the Milwaukee Bucks, trade everybody, trade Dame, trade everybody? Or do you think it's like I think in the Knicks scenario, right? They can get like Mikal Bridges and Carl Anthony Towns, be a competent team next year, compete relatively. Um, and then ultimately blow it up next year. Or if they're just going to blow it up, then I do think a team like the Spurs could give them picks. The Thunder could potentially, I mean, the Thunder have a million picks. Sam Presti's like a glorified Danny Ainge at this point. Do they pull the trigger potentially? They trade, I don't know, Jalen Williams and a bunch of picks, Luke Dort maybe. I think the Thunder could make it work. Maybe they trade Chet Holmgren for him. That could be interesting. I feel like it's always going to be the Thunder in that conversation just because they have so much draft capital. Could he work with SGA potentially? I think that could be also very exciting.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good matchup. And SGA is a lot older than most people think he is. A lot of people think he is a young star because a lot of his success has come over the past few years, where other players had success earlier on in their career, like Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, and Joel Embiid. But for me, I do think that would make sense in Oklahoma City for Giannis, especially like Chet already can't make free throws, then you're getting someone who's been to the finals before, has that veteran experience. So you're able to go all in, and then you can really just kind of put the best team around them for the next few years, and then you'd be able to surround him with shooters as well. So maybe you go out there, get another pick and pop center, or you just go really small and play Giannis at center, but you'd probably still have Hartenstein there. You'd have the other Jalen Williams coming in as backup center. So I definitely think that would work for OKC if you could make it work contract wise. So it's just, is it a priority for him to go to a major market? Because the report I saw was he wanted to be either in LA or New York. So I feel like the Knicks make sense. I hate when people say they want to be in New York though, because the only other option is the Nets, and it never works out.
No, don't go to the Nets, please. That would be terrible. Um, I just when I hear that, that sounds more like the media than it sounds like what Giannis would say. I don't. Giannis doesn't strike me as a guy that would want to go to LA or New York, but maybe I'm wrong. Um, I don't know how. I mean, I know Lakers fans, especially after the Luka Doncic trade, they're super excited. They're like, yes, we get to trade Austin Reeves for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Good luck. Um, but honestly, I've learned that anything is possible with the Lakers, and then that leaves the Clippers as a potential team if they decide. I don't know what the Clippers could offer them. Do they offer them James Harden? Is that what is going to solve the Bucks' problems? Getting an older player than Giannis? I don't know. Trading Kawhi. I don't know who the Clippers could possibly offer to help them because they too also gave up a bunch of picks to get Paul George. So like, I don't know if they have the assets either. So I don't think LA would work at all.
Yeah, give it up to the Clippers to do the most Clippers thing possible. They're gonna seal their fate as being bad to mediocre in the playoffs and out in the first round and underachieve. And then they're also going to ensure that they're unable to rebuild because Kawhi Leonard is going to refuse to be traded and he's going to demand to retire a Clipper. So you essentially screwed yourself because you're not going to get anything for Kawhi. You got James Harden back for Paul George, right? And then James Harden, you're not really going to be able to trade him for a franchise changing haul here. So for the Clippers, they kind of did the most Clippers thing possible. Like, if we're going to build a good team, we're going to ensure that we can't build a team shortly after that because you can't trade Kawhi.
That's, I mean, let me look at the Clippers contract real quick. I just don't know. Again, like who can they possibly package for them? They have
Norman Powell and
Kawhi,
Nick
that's 50
Batum.
million. They have James Harden, who's $33 million, who's 35, by the way, going to be 36 next year. You
What
could
does
package
Zubac get?
Norman Powell, who's 20 million, Bogdanovich. But again, like if I'm the Bucks, do I want to get old players or do I want to get young players? This is when the Spurs come in the mix and the Thunder come in the mix for me. After that, like Zubac is 10 million, and then a bunch of other guys that nobody cares about. Nobody wants Jordan Miller or Ben Simmons. Like, I just don't think the Clippers or the Lakers, and honestly, I mean, I can look at the Knicks too. I just don't know if they have the cash to do so. Knicks, maybe they do, but do they have the capital for it? We don't know. I
Yeah,
guess we'll
I'd
see.
say the Knicks, like, you have Carl Anthony Towns, which is the biggest piece that you'd be able to trade for Giannis.
Yeah,
So,
I think the Knicks make the most sense. And then, on the other side, the Bucks, right? They have Carl Anthony Towns and Dame Lillard. If they can get some cap flexibility, maybe it works. But I don't feel confident the Bucks are going to figure it out quickly.
yeah. I mean, Dame already didn't want to be there with Giannis, though. You think Dame is, like, just going to sit by and be like, yeah, I'm fine just rehabbing alone in Wisconsin, even though I already said I'm miserable here, essentially.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
Yeah, I
think
think
he's
ultimately,
gone too, like both of them. But I think Dame, it's unfortunate that he had an Achilles injury, so I think his career is going to come to an abrupt end. I don't really see him rounding back enough form, which is unfortunate because he was my favorite player outside of Steph Curry, kind of from that era in Portland. But that's kind of another player. It's like he doesn't want to be there, and you're holding him hostage if you trade Giannis and then you just keep Dame there.
yeah, and I think Dame deserves better than that. Do best by him, I would say. But
Send him to Orlando or something. That'd be cool.
yeah, he wanted to go to Miami originally. So maybe he goes back to maybe he goes to Miami. Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins, maybe. I don't know.
With Jimmy
How,
Butler, though, that's the thing. He wants to go to
yeah,
Miami when Jimmy Butler was there, not with.
nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I hate to see that Dame go out like that. Get him a ring, please. Let him ring chase. You know, but we'll see what happens with Giannis Antetokounmpo. We'll keep you updated this offseason about it. Um, we have the 2018 draft, right? So SGA was in a heated battle with the Nuggets, right? We have Jalen Brunson, who is carrying the Knicks potentially past the Celtics. And there's a number of other players from this draft, like Luka Doncic, who will soon define the NBA in some ways, both with his trade and then also with his skill set as well. So we have the 2018 draft ahead of us. We've talked about it previously on the show, but I think it's more timely now, especially with SGA, Jalen Brunson, and Luka Doncic both coming into form here. So I have the NBA draft up in front of me here, going through it all.
yeah. 2018 NBA draft with
Yep.
Luca, Jalen Brunson, and then so I remember the main storyline was like, if you take Luka Doncic over DeAndre Ayton, Stephen A was banging the "you're racist" hammer. He was just slamming the button like, you can't do it. You just can't take DeAndre Ayton over Luka Doncic, or else. This is what Stephen A. Smith was saying. And then he wonders why people don't watch his show anymore. It's like almost you can like just watch him talk and then be like, oh yeah, that's why I don't watch First Take.
Yeah. Well, guess how that's aged? Because DeAndre Ayton gets taken the first overall pick. What does he do with the Suns? They make it to one finals, but it wasn't DeAndre Ayton's doing. I would put point to Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but makes the finals with them, and then they inevitably trade him to the Trailblazers and get him off of that terrible contract. They sign this big contract for him and immediately regret it. He is now riding in Portland, been there for the last 2 years, and nobody has called his name. He's also been banged up. I'll give him some credit there. But DeAndre Ayton, first overall pick. Has that aged well? No, not at all. Second overall pick, Marvin Bagley. Massive bust. Marvin Bagley was a huge bust for the Sacramento Kings. In fact, where have we seen him last? They moved on for him within 3 years. He bounced around. You know it's bad when a team
The
trades you to the
Grizzlies?
Pistons. They trade him to the Pistons. He then goes to the Wizards, and now he is on the Grizzlies as of last, where he is averaging 4 points a game. That is the last we have heard of Marvin Bagley. On a Grizzlies team that squeaked into the playoffs, and he did absolutely nothing for them.
Damn, they Jalil Okafor him.
Yeah, literally, he is the Jahlil Okafor of this 2018 draft. And looking at the
Nerlens
top three
Noel.
picks,
Remember him?
Nerlens. I remember Nerlens well. Went to my. I have a friend that went to high school with him. Um,
Really?
yeah, he went
Douche.
to Tilton.
He went to Tilton?
Yeah, isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, that is bizarre because it's an NBA player from New Hampshire.
Yeah, but top three picks: DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, and then infamously the Hawks select Luka Doncic, who then swaps for Trey Young. Talk of this draft, I would say. But just the top three picks. We have Luka, the superstar, DeAndre Ayton, the wild card, and then the bust, Marvin Bagley. I proved my point once again.
At least he's not fat, you know?
He's not fat.
DeAndre Ayton
But
rotting in Portland, though.
yeah. And then Luka and Trey Young. This trade, I would say it's worked out for both sides. I would say, I mean, at this point, would you say Trey Young has fared better? I mean, I feel like the Hawks haven't done anything really. They had one conference finals appearance, but otherwise they've been pretty below average. Meanwhile, Luka brought the Mavericks to the finals. He's now on the Lakers, where their future looks a lot brighter now. But Luka and Trey Young, ultimately, how that's shaked out ultimately.
Yeah, we joke about it and troll like, oh well, Luca got traded, Luca's fat, but Luca did take a team to the NBA Finals, and while what Trey Young did was impressive, it's a while ago now, and he hasn't done a lot for me lately or won a playoff series. I'm sorry, just beating the Celtics in 2 games after that in a playoff series is not enough for me to cut it. Oh, you own the Knicks, like at some point, like Trey Young is going to need to move on for the Hawks. And it seems like the Hawks have kind of gotten worse and worse each year. Thought they had a good direction when they brought in Quinn Snyder. They end up trading Bogdanovich. You trade DeAndre Hunter, and the team just did not look very good in the play in tournament. You end up getting destroyed by the Miami Heat here. Trey Young gets ejected. So, like, it definitely worked out better for the Dallas Mavericks because now the Mavericks have the #1 pick. They have Anthony Davis, and the Hawks are going to inevitably probably have to trade Trey Young, and that's a player in the offseason I definitely could see moving if we saw Luka Doncic get traded. So, like, did it work out for both teams? Like, not really. I mean, the Hawks have been fine, and the Mavericks were in the finals.
Yeah, the Mavericks definitely won that trade, but I mean, they traded him because they thought he was fat, which was a concern coming out of coming out of the draft ultimately. And then Trey Young, I feel like he's been plagued with inefficiency as a shooter. He's a great shooter. I think he's excellent, but ultimately, he just hasn't been efficient, and the team has been struggling because of it.
He's been plagued
In
by his
between
height,
them, though,
too, and an
what?
ability to play defense.
Yeah, that helps. It definitely helps playing defense, but he hasn't been playing defense very much at all. Uh, Fourth overall pick has been Jaren Jackson, two-time All-Star. He's led the league in blocks twice now, two-time All-Defensive Team, and he was Defensive Player of the Year. Has been very good for the Grizzlies. Ultimately, didn't do much in their series against the uh, OKC Thunder, but he's been successful for them, I would say.
Yeah, no, he's been a really good player for them. He's a great 2 on your team, probably a 3 or a 4 on a championship team. Like if you replace Miles Turner or Pascal Siakam on Indiana with Jaren Jackson Jr., feel like that'd be a good upgrade, and maybe Memphis moves on from him or John Morant this year. But should he have gone #1 or #2? Absolutely. I mean, if Luca is going to be the third pick and you're going to take a big if you're Phoenix, like how much better would Phoenix be with Devin Booker and Jaren Jackson Jr. today? Like it would be astronomically different, and maybe you have a better chance in the NBA Finals because you have Chris Paul, Jaren Jackson Jr., Mikal Bridges still on that team with Devin Booker. I mean, NBA history would be very different, I think, if Jaren Jackson Jr. ended up getting drafted by the Suns instead of DeAndre Ayton, as well as Marvin Bagley. Maybe wouldn't have made as much of a difference, but him going #1 to Phoenix definitely would have made a difference. Going to Dallas, it would have changed like where Luca went. But overall, if it was like Atlanta, really wouldn't have changed much. But Phoenix, I feel like that really is where you open up an entire different world of alternate timelines, because then you have to talk about the finals with Giannis, Kevin Durant. Do you keep Mikal Bridges? Now Mikal Bridges on the Knicks. Like, it's one of those things where kind of event in the universe happens, then you see all these timelines open up.
The butterfly effect, ultimately. Yeah, because ultimately, Jaren Jackson, way better defender. I would say he's a better scorer than DeAndre. I think he's just better than DeAndre Ayton in pretty much every aspect. Maybe DeAndre Ayton's a better rebounder, but I feel like Jaren Jackson, I would take his defense over anything Ayton can do offensively, especially when you have guys like Devin Booker as well and a facilitator like Chris Paul. Yeah, the Suns fucked that up. But the 6th through 10th picks get pretty funny from here because number 6 we have legend of the show Mo Bamba from the Magic, who now is on the Pelicans at this point. He's been traded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in the last 2
Damn.
years. He's been traded 6 times the last 2 years. He's been traded from the Magic to the Lakers to the Sixers to the Clippers, and then Clippers to the Pelicans. So maybe only 4 times, but still, Mo Bamba has been passed like a blunt throughout this league, and I'm sure that will only continue as he is now. Um, he's averaging 4 points a game as we've last seen him. Win shares of 1, shooting about 27% from 3. Mo Bamba, maybe not the guy they wanted ultimately. And then number 7, Wendell Carter for the Bulls. Where is Wendell Carter? When was the last time we heard of Wendell Carter? He's on the Magic now.
Yeah.
Hasn't done
He was
anything.
there versus Boston. He was on the
Yep.
floor.
Yes.
Like,
And then Colin Sexton, 8th overall pick. Ironically, Colin Sexton, that draft pick was initially supposed to be the Celtics, but when they traded Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie, the Cavaliers got Colin Sexton, and then eventually Colin Sexton was traded for Donovan Mitchell. So Colin Sexton, to some extent, links back from the Boston Celtics IT trade, and then ultimately the Donovan Mitchell trade, which ended up working out for Cleveland very well, I would say. Colin Sexton, I think he's a solid player. He's played well for the Jazz the last 2 seasons, but ultimately that is what his token in history has been so far.
yeah, he's fine. He's
He's
okay.
a fine
He's
player.
all right. He's not bad. He's better than
And then
Dante Exum, and we like that.
yes. And then Kevin Knox, another guy that's bounced around the league. He played for the Knicks. He played for the Hawks, the Pistons, the Trailblazers, the Pistons again. Comes back to the Pistons, and then now we last saw him on Golden State, averaging 3 points a game. I remember Stephen A. Smith was very high on Kevin Knox. He was super excited, and he's averaged 7 points in his career. So maybe Stephen A. Smith, if he's excited about a Knicks pick, it's going to go wrong, and if he's mad about the Knicks pick, it will ultimately go right for them. Porzingis, prime example of that.
Yeah, all I know is Kevin Knox is no Rodney Hood and will
No
never
Rodney
be.
Hood. I will take Rodney Hood any day. And then forming out the top 10, Mikal Bridges, or I'm sorry, yes, Mikal Bridges. The Suns draft him. He does very well for them, helps them as part going to the finals, all defensive team. And then they package him and pretty much the entire team to the Nets for Kevin Durant. And has not gone well for the Suns since then, but goes to the Nets. And then ultimately, the Knicks get a package together that ultimately gets him to New York. And so far, he's been a decent contributor for them, I would say, this postseason. Played a lot of minutes for them, played well defensively, but Mikal Bridges, 10th overall pick, ultimately.
So you're telling me that the Suns could have had in the same draft Jaren Jackson Jr. and Jalen Brunson to pair with Devin Booker, and that would still be their big three today? Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
actually, no, it actually gets a lot worse. They could have had Jaren Jackson at 1, or maybe Luca or Trae Young, whoever. And then you know who was the very next pick after Mikal Bridges? SGA. The very next pick after Mikal Bridges was SGA. So you could have had Devin Booker, SGA, Jaren Jackson, Chris Paul, and all the other guys that were on that team. That's pain. If I am a Suns fan, that is pain. And the Suns
That's where it
fans
all
have
went
already
wrong.
suffered.
That's where
That
it
is
all went
where,
wrong. This draft, we thought it was about Luca. We thought, and it kind of is because they didn't take him. And he recreated that iconic photo looking at Devin Booker. But we thought this was the Luca and Trey Young draft. But this is the draft that the Phoenix Suns screwed themselves for the next 20 years.
yeah, because I mean, DeAndre Ayton, they've paid him. He fails pretty much immediately. They trade him. And then they get Mikal Bridges. They trade him for Kevin Durant, trade a bunch of shit for a guy that's 36 years old. And now the Suns are screwed until the early 2030s at this point. So, yeah, I would agree. This is a trade that fucked them over. Plus, they
It
pass on
really could be
SGA.
20 years.
It could be. And actually, you know what? I actually am looking now. They have a pick later in this draft that might ultimately hurt them even more because they had another pick, the 16th overall pick. The Suns selected Zaire Smith, right? Who has done nothing for them, I would say. You want to know the very next pick? One of my favorite players in the league, Dante DiVincenzo, the following pick. My guy,
Yeah.
friend of the show, Dante DiVincenzo. So yeah, this draft gets worse. I mean, Miles Bridges goes 12, Jerome Robinson 13th, Michael Porter Jr. goes 14. So, you know, he's been kind of inconsistent, but when he's on, he's on. Troy Brown 15th, Zaire Smith, Dante DiVincenzo goes 17th overall. We love
To the
Dante
Bucks in this
DiVincenzo.
draft.
Yeah, he goes to the Bucks. Yep. And then Lonnie Walker, Kevin Horter, Grayson Allen goes 21st overall.
Goat.
Somebody that,
Where the
yeah,
Suns went right, where they made up their terrible draft. They went out there and they're like, you know what? Instead of going out there and trading for Jaren Jackson Jr. or getting back Mikal Bridges or going after Jalen Brunson, let's go get Grayson Allen, and he'll have, oddly enough, the best 3-point shooting percentage in the league that year. They get him.
yes. Don't worry, it gets worse. The Suns actually, it gets worse for them. But first, some notable picks between that and the Suns pick, right? We talked about Grayson Allen. Some other notable names we have Landry Shamet, 26th overall. Robert Williams for the Celtics, a guy that Celtics fans were very upset when they traded him to the Trailblazers. So I forgot who they got in return for
Drew
him. I'll look
Holiday.
that up. They got Drew Holiday. Never mind. They won that
Yeah,
trade.
him and Brogdon, and then they flipped Smart for Porzingis. So
That worked for them. Now, the 31st overall pick in the second round of this NBA draft. Actually, you know what? Let me talk about who went 33rd overall. 33rd overall, the Dallas Mavericks selected Jalen Brunson. Okay. 2 picks prior, the Phoenix Suns are on the clock at the 31st overall pick, and they decide to take Eli Akobo.
what?
Eli Akobo, who played 100 games for them, shot 39%, win shares of half a win share,
Failed
efficiency
a name
below
test
10.
too. Doesn't matter everything else he failed as far as stats. He failed a name test with flying colors. Adobo? You want Qdoba or Adobo? Like, am I ordering you at Qdoba or Chipotle? Like, I don't understand.
The best part is he came from France. Name a France player that's
Oh,
been successful besides Tony Parker. I'll wait.
Nick Batum.
So, so they had Jaron Jackson, SGA, and Jalen Brunson potentially as players in this draft. They could have also had even role players like Dante DiVincenzo. The list goes on a number of ways. They had 4 picks from here that we ultimately talk about, and they fucked all of this up. They could have had Jaron Jackson, SGA, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jalen Brunson, but instead they have nothing. Now, notable second round picks besides Jalen Brunson, we have like Gary Trent Jr., Devontae Graham, Jared Vanderbilt, 41st overall, and that's kind of where it shakes out for us. Oh, Costas Antetokounmpo goes to the
Not even
Sixers, the final pick.
Thanasis.
Not even Thanasis. Nope. Lakers legend Costas Antetokounmpo, NBA champion Costas Antetokounmpo, 22 games in the NBA on Costas Akumbo, finishes out the 2018 draft. Wow. When we went through this last time, I don't think we fixated on the Suns. But when we fixate on the Suns, holy shit. This draft is the killer of the Suns. If the Sun was a physical being, the Sun would be a ball of gas that has exploded at this point due to the anemic 2018 draft. I pray for Suns fans. They need a lot of praying right now, and going back at this draft is not going to help their mental health.
No. Yeah, no. Suns fans like Scott Conant gonna be wearing a lot of prayer beads over the next few years because it's not looking good. We'll see what happens if anyone's foolish enough to give you anything for Kevin Durant and get him away from your team. But yeah, it'll be an interesting run. Maybe you'll be lucky enough and the Magic will give you Wendell Carter and Jalen Suggs and Cole Anthony for Kevin Durant with some picks. I don't know. We'll see though. Guy only has like 2 or 3 years left though. We'll
Yeah, let him retire. Let him retire somewhere sunny, and Orlando would be a good spot for that.
Yeah, it would be. But that was an interesting draft. I feel like it's good because a lot of people do focus on Luca on this one, but just like the Suns are kind of one of those fun teams just to bully because they kind of just have like a Vikings or Chargers type of aura around them.
Sadly, yeah, because I mean, like, I think about the peak Suns era. It was like Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire, but
Charles
ultimately they never made
Barkley
it, and they never
too.
made it to like the conference finals. Ultimately, they made two finals with Barkley, and then they made one in the '70s that nobody knows about um, against the Celtics. But otherwise, it's always been them being competitive but never legitimate. Ultimately, and that's kind of what the Suns were in the 2000s too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but that was the 2018 draft. A lot of interesting players that went there. Devonte Graham, kind of at the end of the draft, really nice shooter. Had Robert Williams in that draft. Jalen Brunson in that draft. A lot of really interesting role players. Michael Porter as well, getting over that injury still at this point.
Yeah, DiVincenzo as well. But that is the 2018 draft. Let us know what we should review next week on the show. But continuing our segment that we do each week, last week we talked about what we've been watching recently. You saw The Accountant 2 last week, and I forgot what I watched last week, to be honest. But what have we been watching? I know what I've been watching, but I'll wait. I'll let you go first because mine requires a story. What have we been watching the last week?
Yeah, last week, let me see. I watched Thunderbolts this week. It was a new Marvel movie, and it was
Hmm.
kind of felt like Marvel trying to make their own version of a DC movie, and it felt like almost like a soft reboot of the entire MCU, where we have this movie coming out, and then we also have the Fantastic Four coming out, and it just felt like Marvel, like, please come back to the theaters and watch our movies. Like, we promise we'll try a little bit if you please come back and watch our movies. And overall, like, it had Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Sebastian Stan. Wyatt Russell is in this movie, kind of as Kurt Russell's son, who's like a almost ostracized Captain America. So they almost tried to make a show that had like the vibe of like a Suicide Squad or The Boys type of movie, kind of just a ragtag team, and then just throw a bunch of gray filters on it so it doesn't look like a Marvel movie, and then we'll kind of make it work. And honestly, like, it wasn't a great movie, but I enjoyed it compared to what I've seen from other Marvel movies. It felt like it actually had a purpose and it felt like it actually had something to say. The villain in this movie kind of feels like NF, where he's kind of a very like bipolar, emotional villain where they essentially like went into a lab, created like a perfect superhero, but the guy they picked is just the super mentally unstable guy. And then there's just a lot of interesting things that happen with his powers. So they're kind of just trying to reel back in. So it's kind of like also a message of mental health as well. But I do overall like the dynamic between David Harbour and Florence Pugh in this movie. I feel like that's kind of where it shines. And I liked Kurt Russell's son. Kind of was like he was like the like bad kind of Captain America who kind of just never worked out, fucked up a little bit, fucked around and found out. So it kind of just felt like Marvel, like, please come back and watch our movies. Like, we'll try again. And then they're doing Fantastic Four, doing a soft reboot.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Thunderbolt so far. I had a friend that um, big into superhero movies. He enjoyed it when it came out. It has good ratings so far as well, and it's doing pretty well at the box office. Um, And based on what Bob Iger said, the CEO of Disney, they're trying to focus on less content and more on quality, which I feel like that's what's been missing from Marvel for the last 20 years at this point. I feel like with like the Avengers, I wouldn't say all the Avengers are low quality, but I feel like at one point they got to a point where it was just a machine that was coming out every quarter and they were just pumping them out what felt like movie pretty much every month. But it's good to see that they're kind of taking a step back from that, and rather than releasing like the Captain Marvels of the world and um, just kind of producing to produce at this point, they're actually being more methodical with their releases. If this is like a Suicide Squad type like franchise, I feel like I could actually get behind it because I did like Suicide Squad despite the reviews of it. So this is interesting, especially because they have Florence Poe, who I'm a big fan of, and David Harbour as well.
Yeah, and I like Kurt Russell's son in this movie, and I feel like the villain is kind of interesting as well. The person who's kind of funny in this movie is the villain, who's played by the lady from Veep. She's also in Seinfeld as well. I forget her name. She's also the blind lawyer in Arrested
Oh,
Development.
probably talking about Julia Louise Dreyfus.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know her name, but she was kind of like a fun villain in this movie, and it's a cliche movie, but it's fun, and it was a Marvel movie that actually felt like it was more than just staring at a green screen the whole time. It was like, oh, we can actually have like some emotional levity, take some time to develop some characters here, and more of like a Guardians of the Galaxy type of feel, more like a Suicide Squad. They felt like they were trying to go for more like tones similar to the boys. So it's kind of just Marvel, like, all right, I guess we'll try out something different, which I can appreciate. And like also with Bob Iger, like they're trying to make like 3, 4 movies a year plus like 2 or 3 shows on top of it. Like, how are
Yeah.
you putting out quality content? You just need to focus on like 2 or 3 really good movies each year. They used to just do 2 Marvel movies each year. They would do like one in May, and then it would either be in July, and then they started doing one in November, and then they started fitting it in between there as well. But like, I feel like 3 movies is fine. You have one in like February, May, at the end of summer, or in November, like
Mhm.
Thanksgiving time. That's acceptable for me. But like just pumping out like I need to watch 3 shows and 4 movies in a year. It's just too much mediocre bad content. Because you go back and watch the Marvel movies, they don't hold up. They're bad
Yeah.
movies, like, the acting is bad, like, I tried to watch the first Avengers again for its time, it was the first time they ever did something like that, but the movie, like, itself kinda gave me a headache, and rewatching it now with the context of, like, the entire universe, like, Loki being the villain really doesn't make too much sense for me, like, with that when I go back and watch the first one, so it's like, for me, it's like you have a problem with your movies not holding up, and then you have now, like, 7 years between Endgame, which is pretty much where you just did like a salute to the end of your universe now. And it's pretty
Hmm.
much been like 7, 6 years of just one good movie or 2 good movies. Like you had Spider Man with all 3 Spider Men in it, and then Guardians of the Galaxy 3, now Thunderbolts, and that's pretty much been it as far as like good content you've released. And that's over 6 years of just wasted time and money.
Yeah, and you've had flops in there as well. You've had like the Lady Web in there. You've had or I think it's Madame whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking
Yeah, I think
about.
that one was Sony, but same concept like with
So
superhero movies. But like for
yeah.
them too, it's like you're throwing so much money. Like I feel like fans would have been fine if you're like, I know Endgame is over, like that just ended, like something that we started over, you know, a decade and a half ago. We're gonna take 4 years off to make a plan. I feel like people would be fine with that, and then they'd be excited to see their characters come back. They're like, "Oh my god, it's been 4 years, and they're making another Marvel movie." You could build some excitement, and I feel like sometimes leaving is almost better than overstaying your welcome. Because if you leave and then
Yes.
you come back, then you have much more runway than if you're like, "All right, we're gonna keep pumping out, but now we're gonna reboot it." Well, it's like you already lost my trust.
Yeah. I feel like I've never been big into superhero movies, but I feel like I can tie this into Star Wars, something that I was really into for a long time. And I just watched Revenge of the Sith recently, so it's fresh in my brain. Star Wars had a good system where they'd come out with a trilogy and then they'd come out with shows like in between it, but they would go like a decade without making like a franchise. So they'd come out, they came out with the originals, they waited, they came out with the prequels, they were successful, And then when they launched Star Wars, they're like, we're gonna make this trilogy that we're super excited about. And then they made the plan to inevitably make a Star Wars movie every year. And it sounded super exciting to the fans. And then the trilogy just had no direction. And that ultimately killed it. With Marvel, I feel like you can get away with, instead of it being 10 years, maybe 5 years, but releasing it with an idea of like what you're going to contribute to that fan base, what you're going to contribute to the lore of Spider-Man, whatever it might be, contributing to those superheroes rather than just releasing slop. And I think that's what's going to like that's what ultimately I feel like killed the superhero genre for a little bit. It's just like the oversaturation and just the poor quality of movies that were coming out post Endgame.
Yeah, and it felt like superhero movies have been kind of coming out, but this year they're kind of really making a comeback with Thunderbolts this year being received well by Marvel fans. The friends we watched it with on Thursday, like, we're also kind of out on Marvel. And they're like, yeah, it's pretty good, like, for what they've been releasing. And then you also have Fantastic Four coming out, which a lot of people will be interested in just because people like to see Pedro Pascal. And now he got brutally murdered, spoiler alert, in The Last of Us, so he's done with that. So he's going to be focusing on Marvel. So you have Fantastic Four coming out, and then you also have Spider-Man 4 in production right now with Tom Holland. So, like, you have some movies coming out that people are going to be interested in. And then you're
Hmm.
filming the next Avengers movie, which I believe comes out next year, where you have Robert
Doomsday,
Downey
yeah.
Jr. coming back to be the villain. So I
Hmm.
feel like you really could have benefited just taking like 2 to 4 years off with them, and it would have been perfect.
Yeah, I can agree. But hopefully they're in the right direction now because when Marvel is good, they're great. Because I did watch the Thanos Avengers relatively recently and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully they can tie some more people back. Now for what I've been watching because I had crazy shit happen to me on Thursday. Shit that I did not expect when I clocked out of work. So first I'll say me and my roommate saw the Weekend in concert on Friday. So we knew that we were going to see the Weekend. It was a great concert. The Weekend played great. His opening act, played by Cardi, surprisingly not very good. Who would have thought? Um,
Shocked.
didn't didn't rap, didn't sing. Basically, just had a listening party with some guy screaming on stage for most of it. But that's
Yeah.
neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was more like Phoenix. What the fuck is up? Like
I
every
need you
song.
to turn up, Phoenix.
Yep.
Let's
And
go.
then Mike Dean. Mike Dean is like the Nikola Jokic of producers. Great producer, but he could not. He clocks into work when he goes on stage. He does not care. He doesn't address the fans when he enters the stage, when he's performing, or when he leaves the stage. He just goes up there, plays the keyboard. He's got a number of songs he's produced. Right, he's produced like "Devil in a New Dress." He's produced a bunch of different Travis Scott songs, Weekend songs, a bunch of other people that I'm not even like. I think he produced for Mac Miller too. He's produced for a million people. Doesn't play any songs that he's produced that we know. Doesn't play the Devil in a Dress solo. Doesn't play Travis Scott songs. Doesn't play anything. He just plays around on the keyboard for 30 minutes and then he gets off stage and gets high. That is what he does. All the power to him. But yeah, that was the concert. But Thursday, we get a text, me and Andrew, that says like the first 50 people to respond to this will see an early showing of Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is the movie that's coming out Wednesday actually, or this weekend. And so we answer immediately within like 2 minutes. We don't get the texts that we received them. So we're like, shit. We're just going to trek down to Fashion Square and we're going to see if they'll just let us in anyways, even though we don't have tickets. So we get to Harkins Theater. I don't know if it's Harkin Theaters in Austin, but if there is, you should go for sure. They're dope. We get there. There's this big ass line outside of Harkins. We wait in line. We go up to the first Harkins employee. We're like, hey, we don't have tickets, but like, we love the Weekend. We want to see the movie. Like, what can we, like, how can you hook us up, basically? They basically tell us to fuck off. They're like, you're not going to get in. You don't have tickets. Like, sorry, buddy. Better luck next time. So then we go to the front desk, like the ticket booth person, and we're like, hey, we don't have tickets, but, how can we get into this show? Because we want to see this early showing. We're big Weekend fans. Like, let's go and see it. And they're basically like, well, I can't sell you a ticket because these are free tickets. But if you want to loiter in the lobby, I can't kick you out. We're like, okay, very cool. Keep in mind that while we're doing this, there's like a photo op nearby because there's an influencer showing of Hurry Up Tomorrow. And there's a bunch of photos taking place. There's autographs being signed. We don't really recognize the people there, but we don't think much of it. So we get in the influencer line and we're like, hey, we want to see the weekend. We're big weekend fans. Let's go. Like, can you hook us up? We talked to this social media coordinator and she's like, give me 5 minutes. I'll be right back and we'll see what we can do. Next thing you know, maybe 3 minutes later, she waves us on. She's like, go ahead. You're coming, like, come with us. We get a free Hurry Up Tomorrow poster and a signed weekend letter that he only gave to like 100 people, which I'm like, wait, this worked? So then we go through, they give us a bunch of shit. We walk in and there's literally like a movie like premiere, like when they're on like the red carpet and they have like the backdrop of the movie in the back and there's a bunch of photos. That was us. We walked in and there's just fucking photo ops. They're like, "Hey, take a picture behind the screen of Hurry Up Tomorrow." I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's cool." We popped a few gummies before. I was pretty baked when it happened. I'm like, "Oh, well, great. This is great." And then we go into the screening. We sit down in the back and we're like, "Holy shit, we just finessed like going in to see this early showing for a movie that's not coming out for another week. Like, this is sick. What a great weekend." And then somebody grabs a microphone and it's the director of the movie, Trey Schultz, who great director by the way. Um, he's like, "Hey, really appreciate you guys showing up for the influencer early showing of Hurry Up Tomorrow." We're like, "Influencer? We're not influencers. We have 5,000 followers on TikTok, but I wouldn't call us influencers necessarily." Nonetheless, he's like, "Thank you guys so much for addressing this. Like, we love you. Great." The weekend wanted to make it, but he's at dress rehearsal. And then he's like, actually, he's right here. The weekend comes into the movie theater and addresses everybody and says, "Hey, thank you so much for showing us everything and like showing love for us." Weekend walks into our theater. We're like, what the fuck? We just saw Abel Tesfaye in the flesh, like pretty close to where we were. And the best part of this is hilarious. This is the best part. I meet two famous people, kind of famous people. So while the weekend is talking, and it's a huge moment, I hear this guy like is scrolling on Twitter, and he clicks on a link that ends up playing Kanye's new song HH, and it just does the verse of the song Hail
What's
Hitler.
HH mean?
Yeah, yeah. And we're like, oh god, this guy. I turn around, and it's Anthony from the NFR podcast, music podcast, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the guy from the NFR podcast. For those who don't know, good music podcast would shut him out. I also see Anthony Fantano at one point
What?
while I'm there. People just flown out to see the weekend movie ultimately. So we're like, holy shit, we just met like, I wouldn't say they're like super famous, but they're famous enough that it's cool that we met them. And we're in this screening with people with millions of followers ultimately, seeing this movie. We're like, holy shit, imposter syndrome, very much the case. So then we watch the movie. It's excellent. Like, if you've ever seen the movie Misery, that's kind of what the concept of the movie is about, but tied to the weekend's album that just released in January. I definitely recommend seeing it when it comes out. But we see the movie, we get out, I get a picture with the NFR guys, say that they're, that I'm a fan of them, keep doing what they're doing. And then, yeah, we like go home. We're fucking stoked after it. But sneaking into a early Hurry Up Tomorrow showing right before our concert to ultimately see the movie that comes out on um, in Wednesday, like unreal experience that I could have never guessed to have, honestly.
Damn, you didn't take the opportunity to fight Anthony Fantano. I would have taken it.
Wasn't worth it. I was like, hey man, your takes suck, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I was too excited, man. I was like, I don't want to fuck this up. So yeah, that shit was bizarre. But yeah, he showed up. I got a picture. I got a poster that I'm looking at right now. I got a letter that I'm probably gonna sell for thousands of dollars, hopefully. Um, and yeah, that shit was unreal. The movie, I think you would like it if you saw it. I definitely think it's an edible movie. But it's really cool. I think if you're a fan of The Weeknd, I think you would like it. Good acting overall. Jenna Ortega does a good job. But yeah, that shit was bizarre.
That's wild. He just like
Yeah.
asked, "Can we come in now?" No. How about now?
But you know what this teaches me a lot of things. For one thing, if you get tickets to something like this, you got to like force yourself in. And if you're in our position, like the power of free will is very real. Because literally all we did was like, we're a fan, we want to go in. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. Can we go in now? No. Okay. Can we go in now? Sure. Like we ended up just getting in when other people got tickets and didn't get in. Like there were people who got tickets and didn't end up seeing the screening, but we
Really?
did. Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, sucks for them, bozos. At least
Yeah.
maybe they saw the movie, but they didn't see it with influencers like we did, which was cool. So yeah, no, free will. If you have free will, take advantage of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, if you just bother people, eventually you'll get what you want. It's like why like most people like if they call somewhere, they know they'll probably get told no, but they'll like bother you until you get something else. And, like typically
Yeah.
too, like any like customer service thing, like you can whine until you get something, and a lot of people have gotten pretty far doing that. That's why Karens are a thing because they're used to just whining, and then you can get a little extra out of it.
Yeah. And that is the beauty and the pain behind stuff like that, unfortunately. But unreal experience. That shit was probably the highlight of Phoenix so far. That shit was insane.
Yeah, that's crazy that the weekend was just out there like, oh, what's up, everyone?
Yeah, and we met this guy like entering in because he was trying to get in too. And he like, there's a picture that the weekend posted, and the guy that was in that picture was just the guy that was also trying to get in with us. So he was like right next to him, like shoulder length apart, next
Damn.
to the weekend. Yeah, it was insane. But yeah, no, I'd recommend the movie. The show was good. I think that Playboy Cardi is going to drop out of the tour because he's dog shit. So we'll
I
see who
don't
they
know why
replace
you'd
him with.
add him to like JPEG. I know like this person isn't owned. JPEG Mafia had some person, guy, woman, whatever it was, named Jane. Just like one of the worst artists I've ever heard. Just live
Hmm.
out there, especially for like hip hop. Like hip hop already isn't as good live because it doesn't have a full live band. But when you add someone who already can't rap to that equation, and like with hip hop, like most people don't rap live either. Like it's pretty rare you see someone like go out there like Tech Nine or Denzel Curry and actually hit it live.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it was bad. And like a lot of people, like people knew like Timeless and like some of Playboy Cardi's songs, but a lot of people were just kind of like doing like this nonchalant kind of like headbang, but they weren't into it. Like it wasn't good. And Playboy Cardi sucked. And a lot of like post comments were talking about how bad he performed. Because then
Yeah,
the other part, so Playboy Cardi didn't perform like at all when he was singing. Like he didn't rap the song. And then when Timeless came on and he was on the stage with the weekend, the weekend's like sing to them, like sing, like you could see him like sing to the fans. And Playboy Cardi, like there's a video of him like doing an eye roll, like, oh, here we go. I gotta sing my song. It's like disgraceful, but that's okay. We don't
yeah. It's
that's
like
why we're
at
not
that
fans.
point, like, why do you? I don't understand why artists like that have fans. Where clearly you go to see them and they don't care about you and they're just shitting all over them. He puts out like mediocre to bad music, and his fans like it. Like if you like it, like sure, that's your thing. Like it's not for me, whatever. But like it just, I could get it if he was. It seemed like he was trying and putting out music that bad. Like at least there's like some respect there, but like it doesn't even seem like he's trying to make the best music possible. And then most of his music just feels like it's his producers making up for him being a terrible artist. And then also like he gives it no effort live. Like I don't
Yeah,
understand why people like continue to come back to artists like that.
I agree. I just feel like it just gives like concerts like that a bad name. Where like last time we saw Mike Dean and Kate Tronada like another producer, and I mean it wasn't as exciting as it like a rap concert would be, but it was still like they still performed. They got the crowd ready for the weekend. So I think he's going to be dropped out. They'll probably replace him with like Dochi or some shit, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, at least Dochi like tries. Like she doesn't have like my like she's not like my favorite like style of rap. But like she definitely makes good music and like is a more deserving opener. Like she won album of the year. Of course she's
Yeah.
like a better opener than him. But like yeah, after like two like after seeing like Post Malone brought Jelly Roll to open for him. So like he essentially has like another headlining act where like if Playboy Cardi headlined, what he'd play like an hour and 15 minutes and walk off, maybe 45 minutes, if that.
Yeah, 45 minutes, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like with artists like that, they're like feature artists more often than not than they are like main act, you know? And even just in like their own songs. I feel like his biggest songs are the songs that he's either featured on or songs that um other people feature on and outshine him more often than not.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, especially you see like someone like especially like the weekend's giving you a chance. The fact that you said he was on stage, like
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to do that. I would immediately been like, all right, I'm kicking him off tour in front of everyone here,
Yeah. Honest to God. It was bad.
redoing his
But
verse too, like having someone else hop on his verse and then taking him off of it. Like I
yeah.
would do that if I was a rapper. Like rappers edit it. They're like Young Thug, like when he released like the Green album, there were some verses that he added to it from rappers. Like why don't rappers ever just take someone's verse off their album?
Yeah. Yeah, honest to God. I think that was it was rough. Definitely I didn't expect much from the concert, but I was left unimpressed by Playboy Cardi.
Yeah. How long did the weekend play for?
He played for like 2 hours. He played 40 songs. So he puts on a performance. The weekend, I mean, he this might be his last tour, so I mean, he played all eras and he was great. And last tour he was the same way. Like he's somebody worth like if you're a fan of the weekend, he's worth seeing. I would say the same for Kendrick. When I saw him, like certain artists, you can tell like take it up a notch when it comes time to perform. They don't half-ass it, and I feel like Weekend set design, he's got like you know just like the whole stage setup, the visuals in the back. Like he puts on a performance
Yeah, and he's like a great artist too, and I like his music, but he does seem like he is better live. Like
for
especially
sure.
with the performance aspect of it, where I feel like it's rare where you can say like an artist elevates their music in concert because I feel like it's hard to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and we were on the floor too, so we got to see it like in the thick of it, and it was cool. It wasn't a pit, but it was still like a good experience. I don't know if I'll do the pit again, but it was cool. I would recommend seeing the weekend if you can.
Did he have like a full like crew with him on stage too, or is it just him and a producer?
So the way he had his set, there was like these like 6 to 8 like red, um, not I don't know how to describe them. It was just like part of the visual presentation. There wasn't like somebody on stage with him. There was like just a part of the set. There was like these like women in like these robes that were like just there with him, but they had like their face covered. I don't know how to describe it. It looked very like cathedral esque there.
Yeah, kind of like the House of Owls and Batman.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's cool though. But that's what I've been watching. That's what I've been seeing, sneaking into influencer showings and seeing the weekend ultimately.
Yeah, that's crazy. I saw Anthony Fantano. Like that's one of the people for me. It's on site when I see him. Pesky vegan.
Yeah, I was kind of like, cool. What's up, guy? I didn't hate on him too much, but probably could have. He's got some pretty dog shit takes, to be honest.
Yeah, he kind of seems like someone that's like not fun to meet if you're like a huge fan of him.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but I'm like, if I see him, I'm like, oh, what's up, dude? Because he's like a legend in the music critic industry, but maybe for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Damn was a 7. And then I like his videos he does though when he like just walks up to people like what's my worst take? I feel like his street interviews are probably like his best content that he does and I feel like streaming like where he has like his chat too like giving the opinion helps a little bit and
Yeah,
just like having a co-host too.
yeah, yeah. He's cool. I don't know. I don't hate him too much, but his opinions suck. Either way. But yeah, that is what we've been doing. Make sure to check us out next week when we go live and cover the latest in the NBA playoffs. Hopefully by then, second round has concluded. But message to all as we conclude another live stream here. Message we like to carry on. Stay brick.
Stay brick.